In this episode of Mike's Opinionated After Dark, one of the many now, I'm going to be discussing something that is never supposed to be discussed because this is the world we live in. I don't remember the name of this individual over here, but the show, which can be found up there, is Liam Tuff's show. Basically a Joe Rogan clone, long conversations with people. What I like very much about Liam is that he's a geezer. He's just a chap. And I very much relate to that because I'm also just a chap. I mean, he's a much more useful chap than I am, I suppose. Anyway, he's talking to this individual whose name, unfortunately, I can't remember, I apologize, who is a funeral director. Now, that will be somebody who deals with dead bodies and that sort of thing and needs to be somewhat tactful about it, etc. And the entire conversation is really rather interesting, absolutely worth it to go through. But they start talking about the magic virus, as I like to call it, as most of the world knows it, COVID. Okay, I like to call it the magic virus because I started looking into it. And I started looking into it, this was several years ago, so hard that I actually started writing a book about it. As a complete punter, of course. I'm not a virologist, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a Scientologist, I'm none of the logists. But maybe slightly a bit of a linguist, who knows. Whatever. Anyway, point is, I started looking into it, and because I have this advantage that I can look into information in different locations, because I speak several languages, it came with the weird advantage that I could see what the various countries were doing and how they were forcing their population to bear with certain situations in different ways, in completely inconsistent ways, which made no sense pretty much anywhere. And now they are talking specifically about something that I'm going to let him say so we can hear him, that affected a member of my extended family. On my wife's side, a relative of hers perished during the magic pandemic of magics. So let's hear what this chap has to say. Bear in mind, this is an individual. I've heard of this individual through other channels. For example, Dr. John Campbell had him on, etc. This is an individual that deals with dead bodies all the time. Right? You can't call this individual not an expert. Could he be biased? Yes, maybe, whatever. I don't know. Right? He's got nothing to gain by doing this. By talking about this in terms that are counter to the narrative. He's got everything to gain by being quiet. So, anyhow, let's go. Let's see what he has to say specifically at this point.
That's what they were doing. They were doing it because that was government policy, was the only drugs they were allowed to administer was remdesivir. Have a look at the common side effects of remdesivir. Have a look for yourself. You can Google it on your phone. Tell me if you think it's conducive to the recovery in a respiratory patient. You then put them on ventilation, right? People that didn't even need ventilating were put on a ventilator because they were paid to do that. And then what the ventilator does is it overfills the lungs, tears the lungs, and makes that condition worse. And now, as a funeral director, when I was picking up these COVID patients, they all had the same story, right? Mum never went into hospital with COVID. She went in with a water infection. And then they spam tested her in there until they got a positive result and moved her on the COVID ward. She was asymptomatic. And then they gave her the drugs to make her better, even though she weren't fucking ill. They gave her remdesivir and they ventilated her and she went and died COVID. That's what...
Okay. So, this isn't exactly how it went for this relative of mine as far as I understand. The relative of mine did have symptoms. By symptoms, I don't mean symptoms of the magic virus, particularly because towards the end, the magic virus had every symptom. Are you slightly drowsy? Are you feeling like vomiting? They invented all sorts of stuff, long COVID, whatnot, blah, 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 blah. So setting aside all of the ridiculous variants that only a numpty would believe, turns out the world seems to be made almost entirely out of them. Though I never meet one somehow. Anyway, she had a flu of some sort. And she desperately did not want to go to the hospital. Her close relatives pretty much forced her to go. She was developing what seemed to be a pneumonia of sorts. Just a very, very strong flu, essentially. She had. And they put her in, and the same week or something, they confirmed it was that, and she died. And they confirmed it was a magic virus death. So it's literally what happened in my family. It's the only individual I'm aware of within my family, and this would be extended, that had this. Now, bear in mind, she was also very old. So that played a part. It is absolutely amazing to me that this has occurred during my lifetime. In my lifetime, and in your lifetime, possibly, people have been put in jail in their own home. A domiciliary arrest, essentially. What do you call it? House arrest. That's what you call it in English. Right? Couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. Depending on country, you could stay 3 feet away or 2 feet away, or if it was metric, it was going to be 2 meters or 3 meters or a meter, etc. If you're in a restaurant, though, you could take your mask off just so you could put the food in your face, because, you know, the virus is going to take a break between forkfuls. But if you went to the bathroom, you had to put a mask back on. I mean, the level of retardation that I observed there was epic. What I observed was dystopianly stupid. In fact, I played a game at the time. I'm not going to say anything that could put me in jeopardy on a legal level, but I am going to admit to a game I played. When I wore a mask, I wore the same mask for 7 months, 7 or 8 months, something like that. It was hairy by the end. It was one of those reusable masks. And I was deliberately playing the game, the mask that I would wear, so I was certain myself, right? Playing the game to have it as filthy as possible to see if I could catch anything, which I didn't, to my knowledge. The following year, ironically, I was violently ill for a year almost. But never got the jab. Nobody in my family got the jab. We're still here. It's incredible. The only person, like I said, that has gone, I do believe she was jabbed several times, and I do believe, I mean, we were at a 2,000 kilometer distance, so I mean, if the virus becomes lazy 2 meters in, I think we were at safe distance. That was proper quarantine. That anyway, our older relatives were all jabbed. My mother passed away 1 year after the magic virus for a blood clot in her brain, I think. Yeah. But anyway, this chap over here talks about and then shows Liam these samples of these rubbery clots that he found in the bodies of people when they were being embalmed. And I know he presented this evidence to Dr. Campbell before, etc., etc., etc. And he is personally convinced that this has to do with vaccine. And people, of course, called him anti-vaxxer, etc., even though he has every other vaccine. It's just this one in particular he's got a problem with. it is important, in my opinion, that conversations like these are had and that people remember. As the Quebecois would say, je me souviens. It's pretty important to remember that we all went through 2 years of life destruction for a lie. It's pretty important we remember the level of power that the government is able to exert on its people. And by government, I don't mean yours. I mean a global government. Though it changed from place to place. Say, my understanding is in Florida, absolutely nothing was done. My understanding is in Sweden, half of the things were done, or in Denmark, I can't remember, and Brazil as well, etc. And everybody's claiming all of these numbers. I remember his name is John. John himself in this video says, we weren't getting the deaths. We were told that there were deaths, but I wasn't seeing more deaths. And that was a problem. Because everybody was trying to count these deaths of this pandemic climbing and it wasn't happening. Is what he said. Now this is a man who deals with dead bodies on a consistent basis. And it doesn't matter how much evidence there is. It doesn't matter how many logical contradictions like the ones that I mentioned about the differences between the countries or locations, states in the case of America and so on. Nothing matters because you're just supposed to believe. It's one of the fact that the world is entirely made out of religion is irritating. By religion, I do not mean the belief in the metaphysical and in a benevolent or malevolent or whatever you like entity. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about the fact that all rationale is unacceptable. This is now pretty much the status quo. Charlie Kirk gets offed and everybody is supposed to accept the narrative. The thing is, the people don't by now. Nobody does. Loads of people simply don't accept narratives anymore. To the point in which so many people are omni-skeptical. There's no topic they're willing to believe any narrative on. Strange place to be sure. But for 2 years, our life was destroyed. That would be potentially a reason to ask for reparations, would it not? Anyway, I shall leave you to mull this over. But yeah, much ado about nothing. And then if John is correct, well, a lot of victims. A lot of real victims from a fake thing. Not too shabby.